We're on.
Ding.
That didn't work. There we go.
That's what it needed. Where's the on button? Shall we?
Where is the on button?
Shall we put this here for just the old time's sake? Okay. Shall we just blow into it?
I suppose. Good morning.
Good morning.
This is now. It's a bridge to a better world, or so we hope. You have to.
I did that.
Yeah, you did that. Yeah.
Right.
We'll be right with you.
Okay, we're here.
We're ready? Okay, we're ready.
This is now. Okay, I'm Teresa Mitchell.
And I'm Ani.
I have some things to say, especially if I pull them up on my teleprompter. Let's see. I'll hit the button that says all mail. It brings up all the mail. And it doesn't bring up what I just sent it, though. Oh, well, good morning, good morning, good morning. What the heck? Okay, I'm going to see if I still have it. This just disappeared.
Try in your sent folder. What the heck?
Yeah. Oh, that's where it is.
There we go.
Send it to sent. Okay, so I'll do some headlines here. I'll just start over. This is now Bridge to a Better World.
We'll consider ourselves the tin toys of the morning.
Yes.
Carry on.
Atlanta police officers, according to Popular Resistance, have arrested 3 members of the Atlanta Solidarity Fund, a nonprofit organization that provides support for people who are arrested at protests or prosecuted for movement involvement by way of jail and legal support, and accompaniment bail funds, and helping provide access to representation. So that bail fund that you are counting on, and those people that have helped you get through the legal process if you've been protesting, well, that's subject to arrest now, at least in Atlanta. The 3 arrested organizers were booked in DeKalb County Jail, where they were each charged with money laundering and charity fraud. And the excuse that the cops are coming up for this is that they are violating the Homeland Security, who's he wants this, as domestic extremists. Let's see, they said they were misleading contributors by using funds collected through a state of Georgia registered 501c3 network for strong communities to fund the actions in part of Defend the Atlanta Forest, a group classified by Department of Homeland Security as domestic violent extremists. So it means something when they start calling you names. And when they start calling you domestic violent extremists, then they can just haul off and arrest you, or anyone who tries to help you. The accusation leveled at the Solidarity Fund activists is related to the ongoing struggle in Atlanta against the construction of Cops City, a U.S. $90 million urban warfare police training facility to be built on 100 acres of public land. So that's where that aspect of fascism is at. According to Vice, companies can now sue unions for damages incurred by striking, according to a Supreme Court ruling released on Thursday morning. And this is the one you were saying that Ketanji Brown was the only
dissenting vote
against it. The case sets a new precedent.
Which kind of blows my mind.
Yeah, this is a scary one. So that's a new precedent for how companies can respond to striking workers as large-scale strikes become more common in the U.S. And I was looking at some of the details on that. They sort of nibbled at it. They're not coming out and saying you can't strike or that you always owe money for striking. But they came so close to doing that they want to go back to it. And actually, some of the Supremes are saying amongst themselves that they're waiting for something more direct so they can attack the right to strike, basically, is what they want to do. And
why would they want to do that, Teresa?
Because they want to rule us like dogs.
Well, I mean, it kind of gets around to our main theme of the morning, which is how the ultra-rich will spare nothing to grind us, all of humanity, and the earth to dust in its search to ever expand its resources.
They can sense that their backs are about to be against the wall, I hope. Anyway, high heat shut down schools in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and in Pittsburgh on Tuesday, forcing students to stay at home in the face of rising temperatures and inadequate air conditioning. That's the New York Times. In Detroit, the conditions led administrators to close that city's schools 3 hours earlier than usual on Thursday, and similar plans were in place for Friday for the city's 53,000 students. In Pittsburgh, 40 schools in a district with more than 18,000 students shifted to remote learning, citing health concerns about sweltering classrooms. In Grand Rapids, in Western Michigan, home to 17,000 students, administrators canceled school for the remainder of the week as temperatures climbed to the 90s on Thursday. They're not used to that. The schools don't have air conditioning. So things are heating up. More than 1,000 Amazon corporate workers and allies rallied outside the giant Seattle headquarters on Wednesday. This is from Common Dreams, to protest the company's return to work policy and what they called its failure to fulfill its climate pledge. Sign and chant slogans during the Seattle lunchtime rally, which was organized by Amazon Employees for Climate Justice and Amazon's remote advocacy group, included Amazon, Stop Greenwashing, and Hell No RTO, a rebuke of the mandate from Amazon CEO Andy Jassy to return to the office at least 3 days per week. And the tap dance performance that we have here is from Mr. Neo, who feels like he doesn't have quite enough cushion, but he may settle into it. We shall see. In the meantime, tappity tap. And so all of that brings me to a discussion that Ani and I were having yesterday as we drove about in an electric car charged only by windmills. No, actually, it was just whatever car we get our hands on. And I was remembering that Fidel Castro once said that he wouldn't necessarily trust, he didn't use the word necessarily, he wouldn't trust Americans, even if they went socialist. And the reason he said that is because the paradigm of mean-spiritedness and hierarchy that pervades the society in its structure. And it would be unfair to apply that to any one person. But I think I can see where he is going when it comes to capitalism. There's an unaddressed socio-political paradigm in the USA, and I think it's derived from slavery, because slavery hasn't really been addressed. I mean, to the point that in Florida, they're trying to keep people from talking about it at all, much less pay reparations. Now, California, on the other hand, has begun to pay reparations, and I need to know the details on that. I confess that that's a ball that I dropped. I wanted to know more about the reparations in California. I don't know how extensive they are.
Can we go ahead. You don't know how extensive the reparations are in California. I'm very sorry. I touched your foot. I didn't mean to derail your thoughts.
I missed something.
No.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. This is just sort of what happens as we sit very close to each other. And I didn't mean to derail you. I did not mean to.
Oh, well, okay.
I was merely trying to move my leg, my dear.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought there's a message. I've stepped on it. I could not figure out what that was.
I know. Anyway. I'll put my leg over here.
Okay. So
here's our professional podcast.
Yeah. So the hierarchy that we accept is pretty extreme, and I do think it comes from this unaddressed, slavery, because this slavery is a way of working a person to death via torture. In its core, there's only one reason someone would act as a slave, and that's because the alternative is death or torture. And so you offer death and torture, and you get free labor, and that's what the United States did all over the United States, I should add, and then mostly in the South. But so there has always been an attempt to replace the ability to extract that level of wealth, to create the sort of kings that ruled in the South at the time of slavery. Their resentment, the rulers of the South, their elites has such resentment that it carries over to the present day and is part of the popular culture. But I think more than that, the attempt to recreate a system in which vast wealth can be created for a very small amount of people has just been in the heads of Americans in a sense of vacuum in the case of most people, but intentionally in the case of hegemons like David Koch and Charles Koch, and I can't remember which one's dead. Damn them both to hell anyway. And Elon Musk currently is he's realizing that his position in life is simply untenable, even if he is, somewhat associated with the rocket scientist that he hired. after Reconstruction, after the Civil War, slavery was replaced with slavery by a different name. And that extended into, for example, my family, not directly into my life, but into the wealth that was represented in a part of my family. My grandfather was a sharecropper, but my grandmother came from a wealthy family, and I went to their former plantation once. No one said the word plantation, but it was a big farm in Texas, and there's no way that they were able to be a big farm in Texas. And my grandmother had been born in the late 1860s or early 1870s, I forget. There's no way they did that without slavery. And Texans, big farm holders in Texas, fought hard to retain slavery to the point that we have the phenomenon of Juneteenth. They wouldn't even tell what had happened in Washington after the Civil War, and people didn't find out until they found out on that day, that June 19th of, which year was it? It wasn't 65. I think it was the year after. So they were just determined to hold on to slavery. Mm-hmm. And I think this idea that you have a right to just suck the blood of people all around you, as long as they don't understand what's happening, maybe that's the basis of it. That's still very much here in the United States. I see it all around me, and I see it in the fact that people don't understand what capitalism is, and they confuse it with commercial activity. They confuse capitalism with economic activity, and major commenters will say, well, go on air, apparently unembarrassed to be so bloody ignorant, and will say things like, well, Bernie Sanders made money from a book, but he talks against capitalism. Huh? Yeah, right. They're really that dumb. So
well, they're not that dumb. I mean, that is the thing that we try to that we keep putting out there, right? That is the narrative that we want people to believe, that to really be a socialist, you can't actually participate in this economic system, and therefore there aren't real socialists. We're just a bunch of hypocrites.
Yeah,
right. That's a very that's a thought out narrative that they want us to swallow.
Yeah, and it's devastatingly impossible. I mean, you cannot be here and not be a part of the system of extraction.
Of course, we're born in the belly of the beast. So what can we do?
Yeah. So bringing up to the present day, or getting closer anyway, we had a brief excursion from the norm in the 50s and 60s, because after the Second World War, so much wealth came into the United States, and there had been such a scare in the 30s and 40s from even Dwight D. Eisenhower, for example, the Republican, thinking that communism was just on the verge of taking over everyone's minds, that big concessions were made, big concessions compared to what we have now, and wealth was just plain better distributed. And if you look at what people were able to get in terms of what commodities were available, and the quality of those commodities, and the amount of land people were able to get, just basically people who had been serfs in the 30s suddenly getting this mini plot like my dad had, for example. Every house that he bought had a little 1/10 of an acre in the back, a yard. Everyone got their little bitty chunk of the deal, and we thought that was going to be the new normal. Well, the elites didn't like that one bit, and the Powell memo came out. Powell being eventually he was an industrialist or an industrial exponent and apologist in any way, who eventually was on the Supreme Court. And he contacted business community across the United States and says, look, we've got to fight back, and we've got to destroy this idea that people have in their head that they have a right to a portion of the wealth.
And this was under Nixon, basically. That the Powell memo
that's where it really
accelerated with the Powell memo.
Yeah, was it 72? That'd be Nixon. Like okay, yeah. So
71, 72.
Yeah, so the situation that we're in now was deliberately created and powerfully enforced. And I remember, for example, opening magazines, the little magazines that they used to have in the giant newspapers that you would get in a big city on the Sunday newspaper, and there would be ads from Mobil, and they would have little discussions about why we should all be properly grateful. But they were everywhere, and they were in the textbooks. They are in the textbooks, and they are in the business schools. And as I was saying, the result is we cannot think and do not know what capitalism is, and we do not understand how it extracts wealth and agency and dignity from the worker. We just think that's the natural state of things. And on a lot of shows, I've done little mini rants about what capitalism really is, and I'm not going to do that here. And I'm glad to see that y'all have tuned in. Hi, y'all. Hi, Joe and John and Jabra. Jabara. Jabara. I'm glad to see the comments. So I'm not going to go through that now for y'all, but I just want to point out that we're coming up to I think we're coming to a fork in the road. Either things are going to get much better, they're going to get much worse, because artificial intelligence is nearly here, and the automation that generated so much wealth, along with the attitude that no one deserved any part of this patrimony of automation except for the industrialists. That automation is now going to be running itself. So all of the wealth basically is going to go to the super rich, unless we simply demand a redistribution of the wealth. And we can't do that unless we understand that it's our wealth. We made it over generations, and that includes the form of the technology that makes it. This is our patrimony of humanity, this technology that allows wealth to be generated so efficiently. This belongs to all of us. And if we don't understand that, then it will continue to be sucked up every possible drop to the super rich. And they will, as I've often commented, they will address the climate crisis by creating their own little mini climates in gigantic bunkers that you and I will not be welcome to. And with that cheerful thought, I reach the end of this Friday's rant. Thank you for your thanks for spending your attention and time with it.
There you have it then.
Yeah, there I have it.
Yeah, I really feel that it comes down to there is a class that has decided that they have an absolute need to control, right? And it's a sickness that they have. There's never enough wealth and there's never enough control. And that equals power to them. And that's a power that is born of psychological unwellness, right? And in order to exercise that, they want to make sure that we are actually in the offices, as in the Amazon workers return to office order, so that they can actually control us, even though it's economically beneficial for them to have a workforce that is working remotely. I think that's an interesting thing that studies have shown over this last couple of years. Excuse me, as many workers did go remote during the pandemic.
Well, I think as you gather your breath, I think it's related to the paradigm that's been exposed for a long time now, in which, for example, a union will suggest to an industrialist a method of producing whatever they produce that will enrich both parties. That's never acceptable.
No,
First, because the union came up with it, and second, because it doesn't extract as much.
And really enriching the worker is not what the owners are about. The owning class is really about making the worker more dependent and more desperate.
It's becoming more stark now, I think, because the poisonous idea of the meritocracy is losing its grip. It used to be able to say, oh, well, we have these advanced degrees, and if you have an advanced degree, then you can have a little part of it. Well, this is not true anymore. If you have an advanced degree, and the AI can take all of the information that has gone into those degrees over the last couple of centuries and apply it in your absence. And
and also, I think that the meritocracy really, people can start seeing through that pretty well when you have people like Trump and others of that ilk being put forth as, look, these are the rich guys. These are the ones who have made it. Knowing that they're not smart.
Yeah,
they're not doing it on their own. They're not doing it by their genius. One could say this about Musk as well, but
yeah, we've got people like Ted Cruz, who's an Ivy Leaguer, and he simply tries to hide it with a thick accent. And, it works for a lot of Dummkopfs, but it's,
I think that's opposite my point, but that's okay.
Well, no, they're adapting. So
okay. All right.
They're changing the tactics.
Cool. So, what does this leave us? I think that also what it's doing is, of course, as we've mentioned before, the industrialists who 150 years ago said, "Hey, he doesn't worry about the working class because he can always hire one half to shoot the other." And this is again playing out around us uh, as the new industrialist, as the new billionaire owning class, uh, wants to maintain control. The culture wars that are seriously pitting us against each other, murderously pitting us against each other, are being fanned into fullness, into full conflagration. And we see that in the struggles over teaching real history or not. We see that in the struggle to affirm whether members of the LGBTQ communities are full people or not. We see this in the struggle over people to control our own bodies in a number of ways, in gender expression and in our reproduction. And so this control is being put out there in new ways and in ways that really pit. And I won't say new ways, they've returned to really fascistic tactics and pitting the people against each other so that we can be ever more distracted and shooting each other versus actually seeing the real machinations of the system.
Gotta show Neil.
There's Neil.
Hi, Neil.
Hi, Neil.
He's got tippy tappy toes.
Yes. So, what might you say?
Well, I was going to include the example of Russia in my discussion, and I didn't really get to it, but just briefly, there was criticism from Marxists from the way that the Communist Party in Russia, the Bolsheviks, clung so fiercely to their status as vanguard. And a lot of Marxists said, well, this is because Marx was correct in saying that you can't just rush from a feudal society with serfs to a full-blown socialist society, because the impulse to act like a master of serfs and to act like a serf is so great that it would take generations to overcome it. And I think maybe they were right.
Well, yeah, there's something also about our addiction to hierarchy and how it's actually taught through our school system and how it's reinforced in every aspect of our culture. There's some people that actually are, promoting the idea that cooperation is key. Cooperation actually ensures success for the whole, or at least a better outcome for the whole. And competition ensures failure for most. And so the more we shift into a partnership society, the more we shift into a cooperative society, the more we fight against our hierarchic impulses that have been socialized into us for generations, the more we can reclaim our humanity and turn the system over into something that works for the majority.
I know, and the mind of bores a vacuum. And this is why I want to study the Mondragon cooperative, and that's my pledge to y'all. I will find out more about it because I want to be able to tell how that works. Mondragon being a very large cooperative society, manufacturing society in Spain.
Yeah.
That has been quite successful for decades.
And this is something that we really wanted to emphasize this morning. So I'm glad you brought up the Mondragon example. And that the thing we wanted to emphasize is, as you said, the mind of bore is a vacuum. We have a lot of dystopian literature. We have a lot of dystopian pop culture references. We all know the Mad Max reality, and we're kind of seeing that bear out around us in so many ways. I'd like for us not to go down the Terminator AI path, but hey, that's just me.
Yeah, they're good warnings.
They're exactly, they're meant to be warnings, not blueprints. Kind of like 1984 in The Handmaid's Tale. So, what do? I think it's super important that we actually write utopian literature. I think it's really important that we share utopian ideas. And I think about what gets ridiculed the most, right? It's not when somebody comes out and says something crazy like, something so offensive, like, oh, I am going to extract your labor and basically kill this land to benefit myself. I'm going to poison these communities by putting in these pipelines and making the workers desperate enough to sell it to them, and so they can fight the people that are trying to protect their communities, and I can get rich out of all of it. That doesn't sound like something to be ridiculed. That's just, business as normal, business as usual. Now, if we put out there that we want to actually share in the land and take joy in our lives and participate in a cooperative system wherein all are valued and nurtured and taken care of, where we support each other and love each other, where in fact love and beauty are values that guide the society, those ideas get ridiculed. Those
Hip,
ideas get laughed at.
hippie.
Those ideas are like, we can't even talk about those. You're not serious. Why is that? Right? Because I think utopian ideas are dangerous. And so I want to put out there a call to actually seek out utopian writings, utopian short stories, utopian movies, utopian whatever it is, utopian art form and pop culture references, and let's emphasize them and let's create them,
So that we have different
because
stories to tell.
we need to have those stories in our heads, so that we know what we can actually work towards and not just work against.
First thing that comes to my mind is the enclave described in Starhawk's Fifth Sacred Thing. That's an old book now. How old is that?
It is an
Is it
old
like
book. It's we'll say 30.
30,
No,
40 years?
it's about 30 years old. It was put out there, I think, in 90.
We'll find out.
I'm trying to remember when I first read it, because I read it when it first came out. I think it was around 90, 91.
Googly R.
And so, but that is actually one of the few works of utopian literature that I can point to. And, we need more. We need more vision. We need movies that actually put forth a utopian vision. And so that's what I have to say about that. Because again, we need a vision to work towards. Not like I think we can ever create a perfect place, and we will always have our human struggles of what, development, consciousness, love, all of that kind of stuff. It's, but we can do it in a place that we're treating each other well, where we're respecting each other and the earth and all the brilliant diversity therein. So. Is that it for you?
Yeah, I think
All right.
that rounds it up nicely.
All right. Well then, allow me to say this about that. I have a little tarot reading, and in it I have the ever popular Nine of Swords. It was inversed, and the Nine of Cups, and the Knight of Wands. And for
Nice.
a little clarification, we have the Eight of Cups. So, why would I need the clarification, you might ask? Because it works that way sometimes. So, the Nine of Swords here, we see our kitty friend holding on for dear life.
As a warplane passes to the south.
Yeah. So this is really about stress and anxiety, about feeling that things have gotten to a really low point. And our stress and our anxiety is keyed up to high. We're kind of getting through it. It's inversed, right? So the only way to get through it, though, I mean, we're not stuck in it. We're not, it's better than if it wasn't inversed. But the only way to get through it is to get through it. And there's no sort of backing up. It's just facing our fears, and facing the obstacles, and knowing that we can get through it. And a lot of the fears are maybe a little bit bigger than how do I say this? Sometimes our fears are worse than actually doing the things that we have been trying to avoid. So there's that. And it comes right next to this card of the nine of cups, which is one of the most beneficial, shall we say. It's wish you've put in a lot of hard work and it's paying off. These two cards next to each other are kind of like, wow, okay. What does this say to me? It says that we have real obstacles, we have real challenges, and because of the general amount of stress and anxiety and lack of support in our communities in our world, those things have gotten so big that we are having a hard time seeing the gifts that are in front of us. That sometimes we are putting our blinders on, um, the blinders made of our anxiety, which is born of real need. Like I'm not saying, oh, come on, people, line up. It's not like that. Uh, but sometimes those fears stop us from seeing the blessings and the goodness that can actually help us through this time. So make sure that you're staying grounded, or that you are grounding at least every day, that you can sort of get back to a center where you can try to assess in a realistic way what's going on around you. We have the Knight of Wands, and we have that card really talks about our will, and how spontaneity and playfulness are really important, but sometimes our will can pull us in many directions and keep us from actually moving towards a place of rest, a place of balance, a place of peace, or an actual goal, because our will wants this and then it wants that. We can sort of pull ourselves in many ways. Um, the Knight of Wands is about moving forward with the direction your will tells you, but there is a bit of a warning there to watch for impulsiveness that's going to distract you at the same time. And so I thought, well, here are cards that are kind of like, I can see it, but it could go any of a number of directions. What's winning out here? And I mean, there is a sort of, how do we say, iconic dance of being overwhelmed by stress, blinded by your anxieties, not seeing the blessings before us, and the blessings are really there and bountiful. And having that distraction be a part of why we're not seeing those blessings, but also having our will driving us to those blessings. I thought, I want clarification. I want another card. And that's when I got, in fact, the Eight of Pentacles, which talks about being rewarded for hard work. So this reinforces that idea of the goodness that is there and around us. We need to move towards it and away from fear, move towards each other, away from fear, away from our insecurities, and towards love and the abundance of good relations, of good gifts from the universe that we actually do have in our lives, when we're not, as we were just talking about in our discussion earlier, when we're not fraught with wanting to fight each other because we're being pitted against each other, when we're not fraught with feeling crushed under the heel of the boss, when we're actually grounded and in our true selves, we can realize that we have many things around us that are good and kind of beautiful. That's what I have.
Cool beans. Well, here it is, Pride Month, and I understand that the Proud Boys are attacking Pride Month, so we shall see how this goes.
Well, and also interestingly, the Portland Pride Committee has moved Portland's Pride celebration to July instead of its traditional weekend, where it's been for, I don't know, 40 years, um, because of two other super important cultural events that are going on that same weekend in June every year in Portland, being the Delta Park Powwow and being Juneteenth. And so,
Speaking of Juneteenth,
yes, and so Portland Pride celebration has been moved to July, And I don't know that the Proud Boys are up on the memo because, June, they just sort of, they don't really look at
Yeah, I hope that means it
information.
flops.
Well, I hope they flop wherever they go. May they find absolute failure in their spreading of hate. So say I. You've been watching This Is Now, Bridge to a Better World. Please do subscribe if you haven't already. We picked up new subscribers in the last month, and that's really exciting. So hello, whoever you are. And please do pass this around. Please do subscribe and hit the like button on this video. You can always leave comments below and let us know what you're thinking of the show.
Yeah, thanks for the
whenever, in fact, you are watching it, whether you are able to join us live this morning or you're hitting it on team replay. So please leave your comments. Let us know what you're thinking and have a really just wonderful week. I also want to shout out to my gran. She it's her birthday today. She would have been 100 and what do we call that? 127.
Holy crap.
She would have been, but she passed away on my graduation day in 1983. So, Gran, wherever you are, here's a cup of tea for you. And thank you all for joining us.
Our love goes out to you and to all the ships at sea. Bye-bye.
See you next week, y'all.